Today is Friday, May 23rd. We're talking about the next step for President Trump's so-called Big Beautiful Bill and the Supreme Court's ruling about religious charter schools. Also, everything you need to know about Memorial Day, the weather, the travel trends, and the events meant to honor fallen heroes. Plus, we'll explain the findings from RFK Junior's report on childhood illnesses, how the penny is disappearing after more than 2 centuries, and Kermit the Frog's message for graduates at a unique commencement ceremony. Those stories and even more news to know coming up.
Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in around 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this.
President Trump scored a major win in Congress this week as the House passed his so-called Big Beautiful Bill. In the final vote, 215 Republicans voted yes, 2 Republicans and all Democrats voted no. GOP party leaders did have to make a series of last-minute changes to get the bill over the finish line. For example, they decided to end tax credits for green energy by 2028 instead of 2031, and similarly accelerated new Medicaid work requirements. The bill, as is, would still significantly add to the federal deficits, mostly because of how much it slashes taxes. It also gives newborns $1,000 in MAGA savings accounts, and it raises the debt limit. And those are just a few key sticking points. The bill now goes to the Senate, where more changes are likely. Republicans say their goal is to get it to President Trump's desk by the 4th of July. In a major escalation, the Trump administration decided to keep Harvard from enrolling international students at all. And it says current foreign students will have to transfer to other schools or lose their legal status starting this fall. The move impacts thousands of students, making up more than a quarter of Harvard's total enrollment. The move came after Harvard refused to hand over information the Homeland Security Department demanded about some foreign student visa holders at the school. For that, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem accused the university of fostering violence and anti-Semitism and said enrolling foreign students is a privilege, not a right. But Harvard is fighting the action, saying it's illegal and amounts to retaliation. And it says international students not only enrich the university, but also the country. Harvard and Trump have been in conflict for months already, with the school suing the federal government over its freezing of $3 billion in federal grants. But the Trump administration is still threatening to expand the crackdown to other campuses. What could have been the country's first public religious charter school left the Supreme Court divided. The court's 9-member makeup is designed to keep this from happening. But in this case, Justice Amy Coney Barrett recused herself. She didn't say why, but the presumption is that it's because her close friend was involved in bringing the case. So there were only 8 justices voting, and they ended up being split 4-4. And with that, an Oklahoma Supreme Court ruling stands. It said the school would violate state law and the U.S. Constitution, so it's not happening. This was actually one of the most closely watched cases of the term. 2 Catholic archdioceses in Oklahoma wanted to create the public charter school with a curriculum influenced by church doctrine. And just like other charter schools, it would have been funded by the state. The church argued that by excluding religious schools, Oklahoma was discriminating against their religion. But Oklahoma said it had to abide by the Constitution's mandate for separation of church and state. The issue could return to the High Court in the future, but if that happens, it would be years down the line. 2 Native American tribes filed what they're calling the first major lawsuit against the U.S. government's notorious boarding schools where indigenous children were systematically abused. The suit says, by the government's own admission, the schools were funded with money made by forcing tribal nations into treaties to cede their lands. And that money was supposed to be held in a trust for the collective benefit of the tribes. But instead, the government forced Native children into schools where they were separated from their parents, told to erase their cultural identity, and in some cases, tortured or even killed. The lawsuit says the survivors and their heirs have never been compensated. So far, no comment from the federal government. Last year, President Biden issued a formal apology for the government's boarding school policy, calling it one of the most horrific chapters in American history. But last month, the Trump administration cut $1.6 million from projects meant to capture and digitize stories of boarding school survivors. It's not clear if that move had anything to do with the lawsuit now being filed. It looks like Americans are staring down another above-average hurricane season. The federal agency known as NOAA put out its forecast ahead of the 2025 Atlantic hurricane season that starts next month. It says it expects between 13 and 19 named storms this year, and that between 6 and 10 of them will be hurricanes. This comes as the National Weather Service has been downsized, with hundreds of employees cut so far this year. And because of that, Weather Service officials are closing some forecast offices overnight and launching fewer weather balloons that can help predict where and when storms will strike. The agency and employees union have warned there's a risk of forecasts being less accurate. But NOAA says all the critical weather alerts will keep going out to keep the public safe. Either way, officials are scrambling to fill critical vacancies internally before hurricane season begins in 9 days. We have more news for you still ahead in just a minute. But first, this episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and I love that so many more people are open about going to therapy these days and seem to care as much about being mentally healthy as they do about their physical health. But we also still have work to do. 26% of Americans who took part in a recent survey say they've avoided seeking mental health support due to fear of judgment. But I can speak from experience to say therapy is helpful and worth it, and can go on to not only positively impact you, but also the people around you, your families, workplaces, and communities. I've learned how to navigate certain relationships better. I've learned about my own working style and how to improve it. I've gotten things off my chest so I can move on faster. Overall, I've gotten the support I needed to just be happier. So if you're interested, but not exactly sure how to get started, BetterHelp is an option that makes therapy convenient and affordable. We're all better with help. So visit betterhelp.com/newsworthy to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/newsworthy. Now back to the news. Americans are getting ready to honor the men and women who died serving the U.S. military. Memorial Day is coming up on Monday, so there are events planned all weekend. The VA site lists hundreds of them around the country. Some people visit cemeteries or memorials, lay wreaths, plant flags, participate in relays or parades. Already yesterday, soldiers placed American flags at more than 260,000 headstones at Arlington National Cemetery. On Sunday, the National Memorial Day concert will be broadcast on PBS from the nation's capital at 8 p.m. Eastern. On Monday, President Trump is set to deliver the commencement address at the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. And many Americans will mark Memorial Day with an official moment of remembrance at 3 p.m. local time. During that time, Amtrak conductors sound one long whistle in honor of those who have died in service. And at 3:01, musicians around the country play taps following a minute of silence. Besides all the official reasons for the holiday, Memorial Day is also considered the unofficial start to summer. And that's especially the case for everyone who gets an extra day off from work or school. The day tends to be full of barbecues, sales, family get-togethers, and vacations. And AAA says this Memorial Day is expected to be one of the busiest ever, both on the roads and in the skies. More than 45 million Americans are expected to travel 50 miles or more this 3-day weekend. Most are expected to go by car, and traffic is expected to be heaviest on the roads in the afternoons and evenings. But airports will be busy too, with the TSA expecting to screen about 18 million passengers this long weekend. The holiday weekend weather will be very different depending on where you are. The National Weather Service says to expect warm temperatures across much of the South and West, while it's cool across much of the Midwest and Northeast. The U.S. Congress is now getting in the way of climate policies on the state level. The Senate voted yesterday to keep California from enforcing a rule that would have banned gas-powered car sales in the state by 2035. The House already approved the measure, so this means the only thing that's left is President Trump's signature. And Trump plans to sign it since he says Americans should be allowed to choose what kind of car or truck they want to drive. This could have impacts beyond California since 11 other states have already promised to adopt the state's rule and end gas-powered car sales within their own borders too. But California also says it plans to sue, with the state's AG saying it's actually Congress stepping on the state authority here. So this will likely end up being fought in court. This is just the latest effort from lawmakers in D.C. to cut off state-level efforts to tackle climate change. Already this month, the Justice Department sued New York and Vermont over laws calling on oil companies to help cover the costs of climate disasters. Last month, the DOJ brought unusual lawsuits against Michigan and Hawaii over their plans to sue fossil fuel firms. To be continued. As expected, the White House released what it's called its Make America Healthy Again report. It lays out a theory behind what's causing conditions like obesity, autoimmune disease, and behavioral disorders in kids. And it points to a few factors, like bad diets, chemical exposure, and unnecessary medication. The whole report was developed in a little more than 3 months. It does acknowledge economic interests, especially when it comes to pesticides and other chemicals commonly used in agriculture, saying Congress needs to take farmers into consideration before deciding to regulate or restrict their tools. The Make America Healthy Again Commission is made up of leaders from the agriculture, education, and housing departments, as well as other federal officials. And now they have about 80 days to come up with a strategy for government to respond to the report's findings. Stay tuned. The U.S. government is now officially phasing out the penny. The Treasury Department says it will stop putting new pennies into circulation by early next year. And soon there won't be enough pennies to use in everyday cash transactions. At that point, the Treasury says businesses will have to start rounding up or down to the nearest 5 cents. The change is born out of an idea with bipartisan support. Even though the penny is worth only a cent, it costs nearly 4 cents to make. So now, because of the change, the U.S. Mint expects to save about $56 million a year in material costs. So what happens to all the pennies in circulation now? Well, already Americans throw away up to $68 million worth of coins a year. They're left in plastic bins at airport security checkpoints and even used in art and home decor. Though for now, any pennies you have will still be accepted as currency. That's it for the main news today, so now it's time for Feel Good Friday, when we bring you one extra feel-good or positive news story before the weekend. But first, a quick word from our sponsor. What are your wardrobe essentials? Especially this time of year when the weather can be a bit unpredictable or always changing. For me, I need both short and long sleeve tees that are great for layering and can be dressed up or down for every day or a weekend outing. And Skims always has my favorites. I have the Skims cotton jersey long sleeve tee, just to name one of them, and I love it. It's super soft and comfortable. Plus, other long sleeves tend to ride up or bunch at the waist, but this one stays put no matter what. And that's true to everything I've gotten from Skims so far. These tees are really flattering on. Skims just knows how to ensure the fabric and fit are just right every time. In fact, I'm still wearing all my other Skims tees, dresses, tanks, pants, the list goes on. So join me and shop Skims T-shirt shop at skims.com. After you place your order, be sure to let them know we sent you. You can select podcast in the survey and be sure to select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. Now back to Feel Good Friday. Graduates at the University of Maryland heard one of the more memorable commencement addresses last night, or as it was known around campus, a Kermencement address. The featured speaker was Kermit the Frog from Sesame Street and The Muppet Show. He specifically gave a special shout out to arts and humanities majors, as well as biology students, though the frog puppet did say he would not accept any invitations to their labs after the ceremony. On a more serious note, though, Kermit shared his wisdom about dreaming big and taking big leaps, having fun, and staying young. He also told the graduates to stay connected, believe in themselves, and keep pretending. Muppet Studios said this was one of Kermit's largest audiences ever, and it included tons of fans who waved stuffed Kermits in the air or featured Kermit on their clothing. And at the end of his speech, Kermit gave a sing-along performance of Rainbow Connection, and graduates gave a standing ovation while chanting the Muppets' name. We'll be back tomorrow with our special edition Saturday episode. We're checking in on the state of artificial intelligence, how it's impacting our daily lives, what college grads may want to keep in mind as they pursue new careers, and more. Then we'll be off for the Memorial Day holiday on Monday, but we'll be back Tuesday with a new episode, giving you all the news you need to know to start the work week. For now, thanks so much for listening and have a great long weekend.